Hi, my name is Paul Wodet. I am a Canadian. I live out the east coast of Canada. A lot of the news we've all heard. The Americans are really trying to put it to us. Tariff trades and whatnot. So it's very disturbing to me, as I'm sure it's disturbing and worrying to everybody who's a Canadian. Let's try to kind of put things in perspective from my point of view. I'm a 70-year-old fella. I come from a French-Canadian background. We've been here since the 1630s. So I'm addressing people who are a few people older than me, probably some my age, and a lot of people who are obviously younger than me. So we're all going to have a different take on what I'm saying, simply because of life experiences. And also there's the cultural side of things. There's a lot of new Canadians. There's a very large immigrant population. And of course, we have a situation here in Canada where, how to put it, there's a native population, and we can't discount them. We seem to, but we can't discount them. They've been here thousands of years. And you know, they have their take on it as well. Just kind of an aside, I'm not an expert in this, but from what I understand, they, for the most part, have clear crossing between the Canada and the U.S. border. They have dual citizenship. So what's going on right now with these tariff trades and this threatened invasion of Canada, for them is a different outlook than for me. So, and what I'm trying to say is going to be different to everybody. You know, and that's the way the world is, and that's the way life is, and that's simply day-to-day things, you know. So as we kind of sort of look at it as it pertains to us directly in Canada, there was the incident in, I believe it's called, over in Quebec, Stansted, and the library that crosses, well, it's on the two borders. And Kristi Naomi, who I believe is the, what do we got here? Americans, she was going back and forth across the border saying something like, we're number one and Canada's 51st, and just kind of goading the Canadians in that way, and kind of, I don't know, boasting about the Americans' side of it. You know, it's really not a tactic that's needed, and it just infuriates people. And there's a lot of Americans on the other side who are not a party to this. And so, kind of like another aside is that I, like a lot of Canadians, have a lot of American relatives, and I have a number of American friends. So when I'm speaking, it's not, you know, that it's the individual, because I don't know everybody, obviously, but the American attitude as a state towards us is a threat. So what's happening in Trump's discourses about 51st state, and we're going to invade Canada, or it's a war, we're just going to knuckle them under. You know, take it for what it is. But it's true. It's what he's doing. And as I try to say, we have to look at from a certain today perspective, the immediacy of it, and that is that I feel that within a year's time there'll be American troops on what was Canadian soil. So he proposed to redo the border treaty that was established, I believe, as 1908 was the last time it was done. So he's going to push, rewrite it, whether we are consent or not. But it's always these threats. If you don't do what I want, we'll do this. If you go ahead and do that, I'll double down on it. And then if he does, and if and when he does, put it this way, that he goes across the border line, he'll just say, well, we're in Canadian soil. And basically it's the same thing that Russia's been doing to the Ukraine. Same thing that Germany did to Poland back in the 40s, 1940s that is, we're not talking the future. It's the same thing that has been done throughout the millennia. The United States has done this with other states. It's done it almost in other countries. They just kind of railroad their way in, take over, and establish themselves. So here the stakes are large. Now, you come into the border and expand the border, and basically, well, he's after the St. Lawrence. He's after the Gulf, the river. There's a lot of Beauharnois, Cornwall, they said hydroelectric generating stations, and there's some in Bécancour. So, he's after the resources. Once you get those, it's just more power, not pun not intended, but more power to the United States. They can do even more. Then there's the fishing rights in the St. Lawrence and in the Gulf. There's mining along the shores. It's just a big part of what allowed Canada to be a country will be taken. If that's done, then of course New Brunswick will be alienated from the rest of Canada by the new border, and Nova Scotia as well. Newfoundland is set adrift. Who knows what's going to go on there? And then you have the similar situation once the St. Lawrence, because it feeds into the Great Lakes, and currently Lake Michigan, currently I guess probably been like that since the 1900s or 1800s, is completely surrounded by American soil. So he wants the whole Great Lakes. So in that aspect, there's been a lot of pressure over the years and a lot of demand on the bordering states of the Great Lakes to drain off some of their water. The treaty between Canada and the U.S. states, border states of the Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes, because there's other states involved, like Ontario, Erie, Superior. Once you start pulling the resources away, it's going to be an ecological disaster. You can imagine as I say, the demand to send water down to California. There's been some riverbeds that have basically run dry down in the States. Now, whether it's mismanagement or environmental attributions, I couldn't tell you. I don't know if really, anybody can tell you. There's probably a 50-50 of this and that. But what happens here is that when you mismanage resources, such as the water, it's going to happen again. So basically, the Great Lakes will get drained, and then the water from there will be gone, and you won't have gotten any better off. What's the impact is for the sort of Western Canada? I don't really know the Western Canada part too much. There's the West Coast itself, which is vulnerable, but the border, let's say from Superior out to BC, is undefended. And it's mostly wooded areas. There's probably some plains. I don't know the area. But it would be easy enough to bring troops in across. It's easy enough to put up whatever kind of military establishments they want to sort of make their presence stayed. And it's what's happening. It's on their blackboards. Now, one side of the coin here is that Trump will say, well, give me this, give me all that, and I won't bother you. So basically you're signing off to become an American state. And the politicians here, we've just finished with Justin Trudeau, and Carney has now taken his place, so he's the acting prime minister. Today, just I should mention, is March the 12th, and 2025, and things are changing quite a bit. But there's been provincial elections, and there'll be a federal election coming up, and things are in a state of flux. So, and we're coming through from a time with the recent COVID situation that was a big drain on the finances and just the morale of people. And it didn't happen just here in Canada, but it happened in the States and all over the world. So the world stage is it's still reeling from a lot of things. And now I mean, it's been going on for a while. There's Russia going after the Ukraine, and yes, that is over there, and but Canada has been trying to help the Ukraine, and other parts of Europe have as well. So it's not immediate to us. However, it is, because as if Canada falls, then and then Mexico is in jeopardy as well. So you'll have a 1984 type of scenario where you've got the United States being basically North America, and at that point, Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump are going to be having their pissing contest right over top of Canada. And then you got the Chinese Republic is watching all this, and they can play either side they want, and then decide who they want to dominate. It's a frightening thing, and a lot of people might just say, well, roll with the punches and go with the winner. Except over the years we have established we had a good healthcare system. We've got rights for people. A lot of things since even Pierre Trudeau. The health care, as I said, the laws that pertain to equal rights. It's not perfect, but it's I believe better than what is going on in the U.S. Over the years, Canada sort of says, well, we got to make trade agreements. For us in Canada, it was a territory. For example, with the healthcare system, that the Americans looked at and said, well, because we want to expand and we need a bigger market, we could expand into Canada with health services, and there'd be a lot of money to be made. And I don't know how it all went down, but I'm sure that in those talks that we never hear about, deals were struck. We'll accept American health industry, But in so doing, we had to basically destroy the Canadian healthcare system, which, again, I'm not the expert, but it's funny how basically all the provinces, the healthcare service, it really went downhill. So basically, they intentionally broke it so that people are going to accept what's being provided or forced from the U.S. So if we lose out on our autonomy as Canadians, if you see what's going on right now in the U.S., he's signing papers. Trump is signing papers left and right. Rules on demonstrations. Back in the 70s, I'm dating myself here. Back in the 70s, people were protesting. Americans were protesting against the Vietnam War. Well, the incident at Kent State, the National Guard opened fire and killed a number of students, mainly because they were trying to protest. And even that circumstances, if you were to look into it, was rather unilaterally aggressed by the National Guard. So he's signing more papers with regard to all these types of events. The abortion issue. The frightening thing is that individual rights get whittled away. You can become closer to a totalitarian state, and it's not a democracy in the U.S. It's a dictatorship. So we have to decide, and here, within ourselves, it's hard to talk to a neighbor. It's hard to talk out in public. We can start feeling the tensions that you don't want to say something to offend somebody. You don't want to have somebody attack you verbally or even physically as to what your belief is, your conviction to this country. But it has to be done. We have to look at it. What do we want? Do we want to remain as Canadians a sovereign country? If so, then we have to defend it. And it's going to have to be done not just with retaliations as far as trade goes, but people are going to have to, Canadians are going to have to sort of say, well, you know what, I'm willing to send my sons, my daughters to the front lines to establish a presence, a military presence at the Canadian-U.S. border. We're going to have to really dig in and say, well, I'm going to buy Canadian. I'm going to support Canadian businesses. It's not going to be easy, and we have to have that conviction. And not everybody is of the same mind. If you're, let's say, a new immigrant to Canada, what stake do you have in it? In fact, in some cases, the U.S. was their first choice, and they ended up in Canada. I've heard it. Where are their convictions going to be? It's a democracy in Canada, or perceived so, although the last years have been rather autocratic from the Liberal government, but it's still known to be a pretty good democracy. Which means we all have a vote, all have a say in what's going to happen. But right now, I think it's not being talked about. I don't think there's an awful lot of consensus as to what we're doing. Because recently, in the last couple of days, prior to the Ford re-election and the provincial re-elections in Ontario, Ford went out and said, well, if the Americans put that tariff on us, we're going to cut off the electricity. Then Ford gets elected, and now Trump has come back and said, well, you're going to cut off our electricity. We're going to double the tariff, make it 50%. And then Ford comes back and says, well, we'll rethink that, and okay, we'll deal with the 25%. We'll accept the 25% and not turn off your electricity. Well, if you're gonna make a statement, you better think it out and stand by it, because in my opinion, Ford had just looked like a blowhard and a fool. And the politicians, are being, in some ways, they can get divided up. We've got 11 provinces and territories, and if each one takes a different stand, well, you know what, Trump's just going to walk in here and take what he wants. So this is serious, very serious. The new government, and I'm going way out on a limb, and I'm foreseeing that Carney will be a good boy until the elections, and people say, yeah, he's the man. And then after the elections, it'll be a new Carney, and he'll wheel and deal with Trump and basically sell us out. If you look at what Ontario did, basically turn around and then he's just chummy with Trump. You're either for Canada or not. So you gotta make some decisions. We have to talk about it, decide what we're going to do. Not going to try sending people off to a border and fight a war that nobody's behind these soldiers. It's not like a play game here. This is real stuff. And again, what happens later is when you look at if the situation were to play out this way, that North America becomes the United States, basically. Then when he decides to wage a war against Russia, well, your soldiers now have this allegiance to the U.S. What's going on? We're trying to be a country that dialogues, works with others. In a sense, we give up what's in for Europe. So basically, Trump says, Russia, you guys kind of, help us out, help me out, and I'll take over North America, and then when I got that done, I'll help you take over Europe. So the European Union really is probably going through the same dilemma that we are. They're starting to think, well, what chance do we have? We're caught between these superpowers. We have to sort of get into touch with the European Union. We got to help each other out, and we got to do what we believe is right. And it's not just today. Our children are growing up. A lot of places in Canada, young people can't afford houses, or the mortgages are so high that there's no freedom. You're a slave to yourself. You've got to work 2-3 jobs. You're between the husband and the wife. It's wearing people down. It's wearing families down. It's wearing society down. It becomes mayhem. In the United States, we hear an awful lot about mass shootings. Well, it's just, sure, there's mental illness, but it's gotten to the point where there's so much frustration, and it's going to get worse, and then it'll be here. So yeah, a guy like me, well, I got a few years left to go. My children have a lot more years to go, and my grandchildren are just little kids. So we do have to think about it. We do have to have some kind of conscience about what do we want. Do we want to try to regain our healthcare systems, the abilities for families to own their own home, the freedom to travel? We don't want to be living in a dictatorship in a state where you've got police sort of checking your every movement. If you have time, read 1984. I was about 17, 16 when I read it in high school, and I remember thinking and asking, and the teacher said, do you have any questions, any thoughts? And I said, well, how could this even come about? You don't envision that kind of thing when you're that age. And at the time, it wasn't there. Technology, sociologically, it just wasn't there. But it progressed to that point, and now it is there. Easy enough for, I'm doing this on my computer and a camera. It's easy enough to have a bug in my computer that's sending this video off to somebody already before I even post it. Recently, we had a problem with a refrigerator, and the guy says to me, well, can you give me access to your telephone so we can take a couple of photos of the problem? Well, some people would say, yeah, sure. But this is the world we are now living in. It's way ahead of the average guy. And as you get older, I've seen it before, my parents, it's too technological. The brain can't process all that. You get older, and then what happens is it's a stress on the elderly. They can't manage anything anymore. It's too complicated. It doesn't. It shouldn't be that way, and it doesn't need to be that way. So I think what I'm trying to say is that we, as Canadians, need to look at what's immediate for us. And we need to make our thoughts known. We need to engage the premiers, our politicians. We need to engage the Prime Minister. I'm sorry I have to laugh because that's a bit of a joke. And I thought about, there may be a time when North America will evolve into a different realm, and so one would think about it and say, well, look at the European community. It took a lot of years, like those various states of Europe fought amongst each other for years and years and years. Like we're talking, Charlemagne goes back 1,000 years, and then the Romans before that with the various tribes. I mean, it's just been ongoing. There's been relative peace in Europe of late, but now it's a struggle to do it. It's a struggle to keep peace and keep dialogue open. But it's better than a world where everybody's killing each other and you fear for your life. We in Canada have not really lived that. The country of Canada, for those who aren't really up on it, is made up of colonies. They were British colonies. And you would say that, but some of them were French colonies that fell to the English. And there's also interwoven, and almost the basis, were the natives. And the natives were various nations within themselves that had their own trading and social structures. I guess you could say they had their own sort of politics and rule of day. their society wasn't perfect. There was a lot of fighting, not any different than what was going on in Europe in the Middle Ages and whatnot. I don't know if the natives find it a better world now than it was. I mean, the individual can't live that long, but in a sort of a retrospective, are they able to live in a better world, better life? We all went through that. If I was talking to my parents when they were alive and telling me stories about hooking up the horse and the cutter, getting to town in the wintertime and putting the bricks on the stove to heat them up and getting out the buffalo blankets to keep warm, that was their reality. And I don't think there's too many people would argue that being able to start your car with a remote and have it heat up for 15 minutes in the winter is not the same as tying up the old horse to the buggy when the wind's blowing and it's minus 20 Celsius out there. There's only so far back you want to go, but we have to look to where we're going. And I think what's being proposed by Trump, if it wasn't America's that was going to be more to the point where everybody had a say in it. You know, it's a win-win situation for everybody. That it's not going to become a one large dictatorship. Basically, from one way of looking at it, Trump wants to have a pissing contest with Putin. Putin wants to have his pissing contest with Trump. Trump wants to be the bigger guy. He wants to prove that he can rule the world better than Putin can. It's these ideologies, if you will, and they're putting everybody at risk. And there's no need for it. And it's very damaging. And I really don't think that that's the kind of world I want the next generations to live in. We've done so much progress in, I would say, even the last, well, even in my years, I believe it was Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau that said the state has no business in the bedrooms of the people, which they revised or got rid of the homosexual laws. The marijuana was such a big issue, and you know, I'm not saying it can't be a problem, but it was hammered. I mean, guys were smoking a joint and being put in prison, and that's not a good place. The marijuana laws have been relaxed. It's virtually free, you know, within reason. The healthcare laws, the abortion laws, the attempt on making equal rights and equal pay for women. There's I'd like to think that there's been a lot of progress made. It's not. There's still a lot of room, still a lot of progress to be made. So we need to go basically forward in those issues, and not say, oh well, we'll just roll over and become the 51st state and let Trump dictate to us how we're going to live our lives. Anyway, I'm trying to share this with my fellow Canadians, and if there's Americans watching it, watch on. I don't think we're doing enough right now. And we can only do each what we can do. Some young people are more energetic and have got more the advantage of the technology. That's a requirement. We've got to face technology with technology. The older folk, some of us have the stamina. Some of us have the, I won't call it wisdom, but we've got the experience and help maybe guide the next generation forth. I don't think that the model of North America it is right now is necessarily the model that's going to be around for the next 1,000 years. It's only been a couple hundred years. And as I was alluding to earlier, the provinces were similar in the situation that when they formed the Confederation, they decided amongst themselves, who is going to have this and that, and kind of worked it all out. The natives could feel that a lot of the stuff was forced down their throats, and it was. A lot of the people in one province can feel that they didn't want to be part of Lower Canada. People in Upper Canada didn't want to be part of somebody else. All these issues were real, but in a sense, it was done in a sort of a democratic fashion as far as the British colonies go. As it pertains to the native point of view, I guess that wasn't democratic at all. But this is North America, this is Canada, this is where we are, where we're living. And none of us can really go back in time. So we have to sort of pull and say, well, all right, this is where we're at. Let's try to look at it. And I think the natives have to say to themselves or within themselves, how do we feel about Canada? How do we feel about the United States? Because they've got both citizenships. Maybe it'd be an advantage to them, and maybe it would be a disadvantage to them. Tecumseh, back in the 1800s when the war was, there was some report anyway, Tecumseh decided to fight with the British against the United States. And Tecumseh was a fellow who tried hard to sort of pull the different native populations and nations together to become a stronger unit. And of course, just like everybody in every country, it's difficult because all people have a different point of view. What's good for me, and of course some people, what's good for me is not what's good for you. The Quebecois have to have a look at it. There's a lot of culture that's in jeopardy. Their language, culture, as I say, the French have been here for about 400 years. And so we have a stake that's different than perhaps some of the other provinces. Newfoundland, the Basques, I believe it was, Spaniards, the French, they have a very, very old history as well. So does Nova Scotia. Champlain was in Nova Scotia, around the 1600s or early 1600s. That was the French start to what was going on here. In parallel to the French was the English, who had established themselves more towards, the U.S., what's currently the U.S. So we all have a different view of it and a different desire for the outcome. And my personal feeling is I want Canada to remain as Canada. I don't want to be part of the United States. I don't want to be part of their culture. I don't want their ideology. I don't want what's going on right now. It repulses me. It annoys me, it angers me, it disturbs me. And I'd like it to end. But I can't do it myself. It's a great big machine down there. And if you remember the Guess Who song, American Woman, you might want to give it a listen to. That pretty much encapsulates my feelings. I don't know if I mentioned that, I do have a lot of family, cousins, and friends who are in the United States. And I think, as I said, we all do. And back for the 200th bicentennial of the United States, Canada put a book out called Between Friends. A nice book. And I think we as Canadians were proud to do that because it was a good friendship. And it's no longer a good friendship. It's been broken. And I remember as a kid going across the States visiting my uncles, and Mom and Dad would go shopping, and it was just like a normal life. You cross the border and kind of basically wave and say hi, and I'm going through. What are you doing? Oh, I was going to visit some relatives, and then never told them you were going shopping because Mom and Dad wanted to get the stuff back without having to pay duty on it. So we're all very, very normal, and so much of it was tolerated, and it was friendly. And 9/11 hit, and it basically started really going downhill. It's too bad, and I say that to my fellow Canadians because I think we're all feeling the same way. But for the American counterpart, those who aren't supporting Trump, I'm glad there's some sane people and some decent people in the United States that will probably, hopefully, will listen and even maybe pull for us, say something, because it was a good friendship. And it would be nice to have that reestablished. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I kind of hope to be able to put out a bit more feelings on this in time.